Hey, and welcome to another episode of the Who Dat Jedi podcast. This is episode 234 for your playbooks. My name is Aaron, and with me, as always, Dave and Fredo, the other members of the Who Dat Jedi Council. How are we doing, guys?
Doing well.
Yeah, doing good. Pretty good.
So, tonight we're going to be talking about, is Andor the best Star Wars since Empire? And that's our topic for this evening. And I will say, you guys might, I don't know, you might be surprised where I come down on this, or my take on it. But before that, I don't know, let's see here. Do we have any, what's been going on? Because we've been out for a while. I will say this. So we went to Nebraska because we had a celebration of life for my mom. And it was great. Got to spend some time with my brother and my sister in the town that we grew up in. And I was so excited because there's this bar in downtown Lincoln that is nothing but 80s video games and pinball machines. And it's like, and I was like, I got to take my brother to this, especially my sister's going to be there too. It's like, awesome. So my brother and my sister and I and my nephew, John, my brother's son, we go to this. It was on a Friday night, downtown Lincoln, in this arcade bar. Never have you seen four people look like bigger narcs in all of your life. It was just tons of college kids, and it was like, and I was just like, oh man. And the Donkey Kong machine, the joystick was all jacked up, but I was just like, after playing like 4 games, we kind of looked at each other. It's like, yeah, it was kind of like, if I was you, I'd be leaving. What a good idea. It was just like I said, looked like a total narc. This would be better to do like in the middle of the day when all the kids are in class. But so anyway, oh well. And my sister got $5 worth of quarters, and she was like, what the hell am I going to do with these now? It's like, pay tolls on your way back. I don't know. But yeah.
And then for the day you need to go wash your car because a bird decided to die
Yeah.
on the trip above, and you need to go wash it in a hurry. That's really all you can do.
I gotta
And
say, when our washer was on the fritz, we were hunting for quarters for the laundromat. So there's another option for you.
And while we were gone, Fredo house sat for us, so thank you for that publicly. I hope the dogs treated you okay.
Not a problem, really. They were pretty nice. Sophie was very much a throw ball all weekend long.
Yeah, that's her.
Like she'd go sleep on the bed at my feet, and then because she wanted to be up as soon as I was up, if I moved, she's like, oh, "Throw ball? No, no, okay, okay, I'll lay down. Throw ball? No, 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 throw. And the problem is, as I told you, it was hot. It was a hot weekend. Like you were I was out there and 90 some odd degrees, and it was every time it rained, it just felt more oppressive. She didn't care. She was coming back, going, panting, nearly passing out, but she was very much dropping the stinky ball at my feet, going for the ball.
Have
So,
Have you guys seen the Instagram? I'm sure it's on TikTok as well. He's called the Rock Star. It's the guy who does the voiceover of the animals, like the dogs and
mhm,
stuff.
mhm.
If Dave, I've got a video of Lucy and Luna and Sophie wrestling on my couch, and then Ellie comes in and yells at them all, and they all calm down. I'm like, I need to send this video to this guy and let him do his magic on that, because it was, like I said, it was just our dogs wrestling and yelling at each other, and then Ellie comes in and is like, "You kids, knock it off!" And then they all just chilled. So yeah, I might have to do that, but
Mhm.
that's why we
You
have the
know,
internet, kids, for videos like that. That just brings me joy. So
it's and overall, I mean, they were fine. Really, the hardest part was, they want to play, they want to hang around, and other than that, no,
yeah,
not. There was a couple of days where I was able to get Sophie tired enough to just come lay on the couch and go. And I was like, yes, success.
yes,
It's
it
not. It's
happens.
kind of like when Dave has a day when the kids just go and just collapse after being out day long and go, yes, yes, precious peace, quiet.
So
Don't need to do anything.
before we came on here, we were talking about Lego stuff that is coming out. So I heard like I said, the Black Pearl is
Mhm.
coming. You said sometime in October. Is that right? It's just yeah.
October 1st. Yeah. Basically, every all most Lego sets release on the first of every month. So like that's why if you go to a mall with a Lego store, that's when you see the line, because they'll have gifts with purchase, stuff that you can buy. And like we already know what's coming out, no, no, on August 1st, which is a lot of Halloween stuff, some architecture stuff, some botanical stuff. But yes, October 1st, you're getting a new Black Pearl set, which they had one, like I was telling you all about it 12, 15 years ago, and that one's up and off the market. And if you try to buy a second hand, it's like a down payment on a real car
Wow.
because a lot of people are really well. I mean, let's face it. I mean, the other day on the TV, I caught the Pirates of the Caribbean trilogy, and people still love those movies.
Yeah.
They're awesome. And the idea of owning that ship, the Black Pearl, which I always went like, okay, get the Black Pearl, but also give us Davy Jones' ship, which is would be trippy
A
and cool.
Dutchman.
The Dutchman, yeah, give us the Flying Dutchman. So that's supposed to come out. There's a whole bunch. So for Star Wars people, big thing is sometime in November, I think, November or December 1st, we're supposed to get that epic $1,000 Death Star set. That's the UCS Death Star, which is supposed to be priced.
Did I see a video of somebody putting that together? Is would that be out? Is this?
No, not yet. That's one of the older sets because remember, there's been
I mean,
at least two
this thing
Death
was
Star
huge.
sets. Yeah, but this is, like remember in Spider was it Spider-Man Homecoming, I
Yeah.
believe it was, when Ned is holding the
Right.
open concept one that he drops.
Yeah.
Well, this is supposed to be even bigger than that. Like I said, it's supposed to be it will the retail price will be $999.99, and it's supposed to come to something close to like 30 minifigs. So it's supposed to be massive.
So, on another topic, sorry to bounce around. We're not going to talk about Saints or Pelicans or anything like that, but and we're probably going to be talking about this on an episode coming up in depth. And Fredo and I are done with it, and Dave has still got to watch the last episodes. So no spoilers. But I just want to just take your temperature of Ironheart. Enjoy? Yes, no.
Mm-hmm.
Just are you enjoying it? I will say, I think I told you guys, I think being ignorant in this respect is like glorious because the only thing I knew about Ironheart was what was in Wakanda Forever. And so I have no expectations, no, like, oh, that's not the way they did in the comic books, and that's not the way. And it's an enjoyable story. It's enjoyable characters. It's well written. It's well paced. I've, I've dug it. So
I'm finding I'm enjoying it a great deal. Again, it's probably not on that level for me necessarily that maybe say I'm trying to think something like One Division or Moon Knight hit. It's probably just a rung below that with uh, some of the other stuff that's come up. But here's what I'm loving the characters. I'm loving the fact that they've made the city of Chicago a character in the story that influences who they are. I love the cast, the way their interactions are going. I love the fact that they're not making it an easy journey for Riri Williams. Like the natural inclination for this is because you're supposed to draw a certain comparison between her and Tony Stark, particularly because she is doing the same thing that Tony is, being a brilliant genius, taking spare parts in a cave or taking spare parts in a garage and making something fantastical. Um, so I'm enjoying that exploration and the exploration of genius, and at the same time a little bit of grief. But I'm enjoying a great deal. I think the show's done really well. I'm kind of surprised that it's short because it's only 6 episodes. Normally most of these Marvel TV shows have been on the 8 to 9 episode range, and the fact that it's only six and that they dropped them 3 and 3 is kind of surprising.
A little bit, though. I think that their effects budget must have been immense because
True.
there's a lot on the screen there. Yeah, I'm not all the way through it, but I think the obvious comparison to me is Spider-Man. With great
Hmm.
power comes great responsibility, and she's clearly not getting that right away, and so that's her journey. Um, and yeah, all right. I like Spider-Man. I like that story. Give me that story. Um,
I like
good.
that's one of the aspects that I think the Marvel properties and stuff have done that I think they've excelled. They really do confront people with, okay, there is a certain prize that comes with your talents, with your gifts, with your powers. Whether it's the ability to shoot spider webs or fly or do whatever, that you have to kind of earn the mental. It isn't just big enough that you have this talent. Like I said, the comparison between Riri and Tony in regards to you have this genius and you have the ability to do good, but that genius can also be harnessed for less good and more nefarious purposes. And it's up to you to figure out how to channel it towards the good. So, but like I said, it's
Well,
the same. It's somewhat similar journey that Tony Stark took. Riri's walking her path, and here's where the difference in personalities and characters come.
all I'm
She's a
gonna
different
say,
person.
all I'm gonna say is that Fredo, that you'd make a lousy witness in a courtroom because somebody asked you a question and you just gave more information. So,
But you have, but you have to know exactly what you're asking
so
in order to get it,
anyway,
whether or not it did.
well, like I said, we'll be talking about it, more in depth, obviously. But because I think
Mhm.
there's some cool things
Yeah,
that are going on there. But
we need to let Dave catch up to it. I
yep.
think he's really gonna have a lot to say once he's caught up.
How are you just through the first three, Dave?
Yeah.
Okay. I will say that I like a specific casting
Okay.
in the last three. Yeah. Anyway,
Hey, what about Alden Ehrenreich? Let's just shout him out, right? He's been really, really compelling to watch in that role. And yeah, again, no spoilers. I have an inkling that he might turn out different eventually, but um, Han Solo himself,
um, Solo.
you know, out here
Okay.
It's
doing good stuff.
and again, it's one of the hidden strengths of the MCU has been their casting. I would not
Yeah.
have thought of Alden in this role, but he's nailing it, and I enjoy tremendously where his journey takes him. And
I
just
loved the interaction between he and Riri when they met. Yeah,
mhm,
that was cool.
yeah.
Well, all right. Well, let's get into some Star Wars stuff. Let's warm ourselves up with some trivia first of all. Da, 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 da. So, Dave, to you, who draws the one remaining Imperial scout at the Andor bunker's back entrance into an ambush? Who draws the one remaining Imperial scout at Andor bunker's back entrance into an ambush?
Han Solo himself.
That's I didn't plan that, but that's what it is. It is Han Solo. All right,
So he
Fredo.
tapped him on the shoulder. Yeah.
Yep, Fredo. To you, whose
Mhm.
appearance prompts Obi-Wan to remark, "Don't seem to remember ever owning a droid." Whose appearance prompts Obi-Wan to remark, "Don't seem to ever remember ever owning a droid."
I'm gonna pull an error right quick before I answer. Are you asking whose appearance that he's answering to, or whose appearance in front of that they're referring to? This is kind of like the Kyber crystal question, Aaron.
It's not as controversial as the
I know.
Kyber crystal. Think about the
Speak,
scene. You know,
you know, offer detail in your response. Yeah.
Okay, clearly Obi-Wan's referring to
it
R2D2,
is R
then
two
he
D
doesn't
two.
remember on it. But remember, it's Luke's appearance with R2D2 that leads him to say that, because it's Luke who says, "This droid is yours."
I will agree with you that it's not the best worded question.
Mhm.
Oh, here's me. What ghostly trio are reunited on Endor? What ghostly trio are reunited on Endor? That would be Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Anakin. Da, da, da. Have we ever
Which
had
always,
an episode where we argue of whether or not how people become Force ghosts? Is that something we want to get drunk and argue about sometime?
That'd be the only way to speak any kind of sense into it. I think is that, yeah, we'd have to get hammered. because there's no logic there.
Because you know full well that the debate's going to be like, how come you couldn't get? I mean, if you get young Anakin, how come you can't get young Obi-Wan? How come you can't get young Yoda? Are those two guys looking at him going, "Hey, how come he got hot again? What's up with
Well,
us?"
I mean, like I said, not to get into this, but I still think that it was a mistake to put to put Hayden Christensen in the special edition, because I think when ghosts appear to you, if they're family members, they appear to you the way that you remember them. That my dad would not come to me like 1963 Don Swoboda, because I didn't know that. He would come to me in the presence of what, and so Luke only knew Sebastian Shaw.
That feels like the kind of thing that you could get into a debate like they did in Endgame when they were talking about time travel.
Yes,
because there's really a good argument to be made that isn't the way that it would go. That's just the way that it makes sense for a story to be told, right? Like it makes sense for us to conceive of it that way, that they would see them that way. But I don't, yeah, no, there's like 70 different.
we need
Yeah,
to get liquored up and talk about
yeah.
this. But right now, let's go to news. Let's throw the news to Fredo.
Well, okay, so we'll start with the sad news first, which kind of broke today in the afternoon. Uh, we're gonna wish, best to the family of actor Kenneth Colley, best known to some of you all as the Jesus in Monty Python's The Life of Brian, but best known to everybody as the one and only Admiral Piet. Well, first Captain, then Admiral Piet in both
The admiral
Empire.
who survived. Yeah,
Well, he didn't survive. Well, he survived Empire. He
he
didn't survive
survived
Jedi.
He survived Vader. So
Yeah, he didn't survive that A-wing. So yeah, his family announced that he passed away at the age of 87, and apparently, he had 60 years in career, including stage, film, and TV, and then he did obviously most of his work in the UK, in the UK. He had been admitted to the hospital with an injured arm after a fall, and then apparently contracted COVID and developed into pneumonia, which is the reason. Sorry, which is the reason that he eventually passed away. So uh, the article does mention right quick. Apparently, Admiral Piet wasn't supposed to appear in Return of the Jedi, but George Lucas added him because he received a lot of fan mail about the character between Empire and Jedi. So
cool.
condolences to his family and thoughts with them all. I mean, like I said, you met them, right,
Yeah, I
Andrew?
mean, I've said it a couple times on the podcast before. The first con I ever went to was a little convention in Omaha, and um, he and the guy who played Admiral Ozzel were sitting behind me at sitting behind me and my brother-in-law, and they were talking about the fall of the Roman Empire, which was, I was just like, this is bizarre. And so then, after, like I said, after this shindig was done, then I got my picture taken with the two of them. And then it was at Star Wars Celebration, I think in Indianapolis. I um, had both of them sign that picture. And like I said, I remember Ken Colley especially was, he just sat and just stared at that picture for a good 30 seconds and just took it all in. It was just a really neat moment. He was a cool dude. So, yeah, he survived Darth Vader though. So
And he was a fan enough that liked enough of the fans that they demanded he come back. So see, kids, Lucasfilm will listen to you. No easy segue from that to so I'll just throw it right quick. Last week, StarWars.com updated the Star Wars galaxy. So if you want to know how close Tatooine is to Nalhutta, what is the outer rim versus what is the deep core, what part is Bothan space where many Bothans died, go to StarWars.com. There's an interact. I don't know if it's an incident. it's not quite an interactive map, but there is a map that you can kind of get close and find out where stuff is. So if you're playing Battlefront, or if you're reading something, or you've seen the movie, so you want to see, well, how close is Utapau to Mustafar?
How much? I'm
You can
sorry.
see here.
I want to. I wonder how much of this is like. Where should we put this one? Then we got a
That's
hole over
exactly what it
here.
is.
Let's put it over there.
Exactly what it is.
I mean, this is one of those things where, and then I'm thinking it's like, man, this has been somebody's project for a good probably year or two, But I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. It's cool, but I just laugh when I think about it because like it's like, oh, good, we finally know exactly. And is it to help with the plot holes of whatever planet Obi-Wan was on in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series and how he got to Tatooine so quick? Does that help make people feel better now? Um,
So, I mean, it's interesting. They actually have some of the planets that are like hidden, mapped out. So, like Lyra Sand is in here, the planet
yeah.
where Seb's peoples escape to. And they do have the unknown regions, but if you go into the unknown regions, you'll see Exegol and some of the other Ilum, some of the other planets have been named in some of the other properties. Uh, so yeah, I mean, it's a cute, cool little thing, you know. Don't think too much about it. Just go in and take a look. I found where Yavin is. I'm looking staring right at Yavin, so we can see how close it is to some of the other stuff. And what's interesting is they do plot not just movie stuff, but book locations, TV locations, everything.
Now that, like I said, I do laugh about it, but I would get totally geeked out over stuff like this. So um, but yeah,
You
I
know,
just
one thing I might say about this that has nothing to do with this, but it made me think of the Force story group. Those individuals that are
hmm
responsible for canon and continuity and all that fun stuff. I wonder if they were involved in
I
this.
had to be because there's some nerd that's going to come. They have to avoid the nerd that's going to go, wait a minute, that's not right because in this book that was written 40 years ago, blah 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 blah. So yeah,
It also made me nostalgic for when the internet was less toxic because you used to see those dudes on social media a lot. And you don't see them on there very much anymore.
Pablo
And
Pablo Hidalgo is on Blue Sky quite a bit, but he never really talking about Star Wars at all. So
yeah,
I wonder if that's on purpose.
well, I mean, I don't talk about work. I mean, so
Well, moving right along, uh, we did get an announcement a couple of days ago talking about Lego. The Lego Star Wars, the next part of Rebuild the Galaxy, is coming on September 19th. All episodes will drop for Rebuild the Galaxy Pieces of the Past. So, Star Wars, the official Star Wars Instagram account, posted a picture showing the new dark character called Solidus and saying Dan Stevens joins the Lego Star Wars Galaxy. So, four-piece special event, September 19th, Disney Plus. It's interesting they're continuing the story from last year, you know, with Darth Jar Jar and all the other characters.
I mean, is it a continuation of a story? I mean, it just seems to me where you can just have another fun little. It's Lego. I like these little stories because it's like um, don't hurt nobody. So yeah.
the
Yeah,
crass commercialism of it though is a little some to me.
merchandising.
Yeah, it can be a little. You're getting hit over the head with like, why does this exist? Well, to sell Star Wars Legos.
Yeah.
There you go.
Because Star Wars: The Flamethrower is not available yet. The kids do love it though.
Yes, they do.
Moving right along right quick. So I don't know. Are you guys gonna go see Jurassic World Rebirth? Uh,
I,
yeah,
I
I'm
would I
kind of
would
like
not
you.
I would not be. I've heard good things about it. I would not be opposed to it, but I don't think I'm gonna buy my tickets in advance type of a deal. Because
Right,
I
like
mean,
it might be a matinee kind of a thing,
I
right?
think the last Jurassic Park I saw was The Lost World, and I think I just stopped after that. So
So it's interesting is Jurassic World Rebirth, which is the new movie coming out. It's being directed by one Gareth Edwards, director of Godzilla and Rogue One.
hmm
So while doing the natural press junket tour of interviews, somebody asked him about working with Industrial Light and Magic because Jurassic World's effects are being done there. And they asked him about if he'd ever want to return to Star Wars. And he's, again, we're talking about the best Star Wars since Empire that we're about to talk later. And he said he expressed no interest, saying, "I'm very happy to move on and do my thing." Now, they did ask him about kind of the legacy of Rogue One. He says, uh, he says, "I don't agree with it. I appreciate it. I'm very grateful that people say nice things. What you have to keep in your pocket as you go through making other films is that it's not about how people feel the day it gets released. It's about how people feel about it 10 or 20 years from now. As the movie comes out, you go, I'm going to pretend I'm living 10 years from now, and it doesn't matter what people say in the moment. If the kid who comes up to you 20 years from now goes, oh my God, I love that movie, that's the reward, I think. So it's interesting that it's kind of put his time in Star Wars, his time in making Rogue One, which was a bit crazy for him. And he's kind of contextualized in terms of, well, 10 years from now, if somebody says it's cool, great, but I'm not dying to run back in there, because usually most people say, oh, I love doing Star Wars, I want to go back and do more Star Wars, you know, but he's kind of done with it. So they did ask him if he's watched Andor, and he says not really. He's had to be. He's been working on other stuff. So he says at some point he knows he wants to, but not
there
right now.
has to be a little bit of kind of bad taste in your mouth type of a deal. I mean, because you said it was kind of an iffy. Well, I mean the running line is that Tony Gilroy had to come in and save
Right.
Rogue One,
Mm-hmm.
and so
Mm-hmm.
it's like at that point, I mean the the other part of that story is that okay, Gareth Edwards was doing a crappy job. That's which I'm just saying that I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's so if
The other
somebody's
side of the
like,
coin, yeah.
hey, do you want to do Star Wars again? It's like, it's like I just went, you just were in a boxing match and got knocked out in round 5, and the first thing you're going to ask is, hey, when's your next match? It's like, no, I'm not going to do that again. Or, hey, did you, it's like going up to David Lee Roth and say, have you heard the new Van Halen album with Sammy Hagar? It's awesome. Everybody loves it. Have you listened to it? It's like, no, get out. That was a dumb question, I think, to ask. I mean,
Yes. Yes, I agree. I think it is a very dumb question to ask him. He naturally would have hurt feelings. He he's probably a million miles away from thinking that he would ever do Star Wars ever again. And also, uh, it's not really up to him. He already got removed from one project, and so why would he lust after another if it's not really up to him whether he makes one of these or not. So it's just like I understand. I think the sentiment from something like this is we like our big happy family. We want there to be a seat at the table for everyone, even the people who've had a hard time with this. And you can think of the examples like the Jake Lloyds and the Hayden Christensen's and the
Ahmed Best,
Ahmad
yeah.
Best, yeah, and so there's been a kind of like welcome back to the family kind of thing, um, in the fandom, which is one of the best things to develop within the fandom over the last 20 some odd years. Um, but this is just sort of like forcing that, like he gave you his answer. In 20 years, yeah, I'll probably feel a whole lot more philosophical about the whole thing. I'll feel better about things. Come talk to me then.
It's interesting. I mean, obviously, the question is being posed because number one, he is doing a press junket for a new movie coming out, but also because we literally just watched the end of Andor. We watched the two seasons that were built to connect those characters that he helmed in Rogue One, connect back into Rogue One. So there is a sense of, okay, have you caught up to that? Is okay. And I think, given the nature of his departure, but at the same time, let's be fair. The credited director for Rogue One is still Gareth Edwards. That's
Yeah,
the name. That's the name that when the iris closes and you get the Star Wars theme, that's the name that flashes first. So it kind of presents an interesting dynamic for him because on the one hand, I'm sure he's proud of the work he did. On the other hand, you gotta feel a bit aggrieved that the powers that be came and took the thing out of your hand, gave it to somebody else, and let him rework it, and then now it's no longer the thing you were making, but you're getting credit for it because of contractual obligations. So how much do you really want to say is yours versus how much is Tony Gilroy's or somebody else's? Versus, and particularly since Tony Gilroy has held now the two seasons of Andor, that everybody's been effusive in their praise. So, you're still got to go and do other stuff and live your life. This was a moment in your life when you were a young director, up and coming. You got a shot to direct a Star Wars movie forever and ever. There'll be a Star Wars movie that people love. Let's be fair, his credit is on one of those movies that everybody fawns over, but it's got to feel weird that it's that one, given the dynamics of how it all came out.
yeah. I just think, I understand that they want
Mm-hmm.
to add, they want some spicy something to the story that they're writing, but it was kind of a BS question. Um,
Yeah.
so it's again, it's mom and dad get divorced, and then dad remarries, and remarries somebody a lot younger, and then asking his ex-wife, "Hey, so what do you think of your ex-husband's hot new wife?" It's just like it's what kind
Even
of
if
answer are
appropriate,
you
it's in poor taste. Yeah, it's in
what
poor
kind of
taste.
answer are you expecting? So anyway, oh well.
Okay, last bit of news, and this one okay, it's not Star Wars, it's not Marvel, it is Lucasfilm, but I want to see your thoughts on this. So it was announced, well, the rumor came out yesterday, according to this insider, from Disney Insider, that I'm just going to read his rumor because it was just one short paragraph. Quote, Lucasfilm is letting the Indiana Jones franchise rest for a bit before they do a full reboot of the franchise. I would expect the studio to announce something next year at D23 because even though the last film tanked at the box office, that's Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, the IP is still an iconic IP, and Disney and Lucasfilm do not want to waste that. End quote. So the rumor is, yes, you're getting a full-on reboot of Indiana Jones.
Two things. One, I hate the word reboot. I wish people would just create new stuff, write new stories. Now it depends on how it was handled. If it's going to be like, you know, the way they looked like they were going with Shia LaBeouf, just like, okay, here's
Indy Junior.
the new Indiana Jones. If it's like, kind of like a James Bond type of a thing, or whatever. The other thing is that, Dave, you talk about being hit over your head. Disney is also currently putting in the Indiana Jones ride into Animal Kingdom right now, and so they want people to be, fired up and go to that. So I don't know. I get tired of the word reboot. So
What I don't need is a retconning. Like, we're gonna retell Raiders of the Lost Ark. We're gonna
right.
remake Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like, what do you? No, not never in a million years should you do something like that. Like, that's verboten, yes. But even if you recast the title role, originally I thought the Shia LaBeouf route made sense. It seemed like they were laying the groundwork to hand the baton off to the next person. Um, that didn't pan out. And then the new movie really didn't advance things further in that way. So there's just there's nothing to be done in terms, I think, of him like passing the baton forward. So it's like, well, okay, so it's the character, it's the IP, it's Indy himself. Okay, then I guess you recast and then you tell new stories because there's probably new adventures that he could get into. You think there was a television show a number of years ago, the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. River Phoenix played a young Indiana Jones at the beginning of Last Crusade. Uh, there are ways to do it that it
Well,
would be a little less irksome than just pretending that Harrison Ford never
you
existed.
also need to get it out of that 30s and 40s time frame. You could put it in a different. You could put it in the present day, and have like I said, grandson, daughter, great grandson, granddaughter, whatever, and they just take on, their last name is Jones, and they take on the moniker of Indiana Jones. Like I said, Dread Pirate Roberts. I'd buy that again if it's a good story. And I'm with you, Dave. But if they tried to like, oh, we're gonna redo Raiders of the Lost Ark, it's like, stop it, don't. Yeah,
So, a couple of things I'll bring up. Number one, in the article where I'm bringing it from makes a good point. I mean, I did not particularly care for Indiana Jones and the Crystal Kingdom of the Crystal Skull in 2008. It was the second highest box office movie of that year, behind only The Dark Knight and ahead of Iron Man, which I never thought that was possible, but apparently that's how it ended up. So even an Indiana Jones movie that I think most people panned quickly and did not like, for a number of reasons beyond, this had nothing to do with Indy passing the torch, it had everything to do with special effects. Weirdly enough, they moved into the 50s. Now he was no longer battling Nazis; he was battling the Soviet commies. With what's her name, Kate Blanchett, doing arguably the worst accent that she's ever done in her life. So there
must
is
get
some risk
moose
in
and
moving it
squirrel.
forward,
Yeah,
which brings me to my bigger point, and I think this is one of the interesting juxtapositions that Disney and Lucasfilm haven't really considered. When Lucas and Spielberg did Raiders back in 1980, there are throwbacks to Treasure Sierra Madre, a whole bunch of other movies and adventures set in in the time period that they were set in, that now may not play the same way with audiences. I'll put it that way. Let's be fair. Archaeology, particularly pre-World War II archaeology, that's a lot of cultural appropriation, kids.
yeah.
There's a reason that there's all this shiny stuff in the British Museum, stolen. That all those native countries where it was taken from want back. So even in these mantra of it belongs in a museum, it's like, yeah, but not your museum, dude. So I wonder how Lucasfilm is going to navigate those dynamics with a new character in a new age. Again, back when Lucas and Spielberg made Raiders, none of that was in anybody's consciousness. Everybody just thought, oh, you're an archaeologist. You go to Egypt, you dig something up, you bring it up out of the ground, you put it in a museum in London or in Paris or New York or wherever, and it just sits there for everybody. Now the dynamics behind archaeology and anthropology and the way people see people's stolen histories across the world have shifted. So I wonder how they tackle that while making still a quote unquote fun adventure rub, which is the essence of Indiana Jones.
I would add one last point. Today, in 2025, we could use more people punching Nazis.
Yeah.
So I'm in on that basis alone.
Yes, kids, punching Nazis is a good thing. Punch them.
I hate Illinois Nazis.
Nazis, I hate these guys. So with that, that's the news.
Well, all right. Well, let's get to the controversy.
Ooh.
We've all heard it. It's been I've seen it in articles and people saying it just even in personal conversations, stuff like that. That Andor is the best Star Wars since Empire. So I guess we've got some things in the talking points here, but I just want to, when you hear somebody make that statement, what is your first reaction? Dave, what's your gut reaction when you hear somebody say Andor is, or even if you don't want to say Andor, just blank is the best Star Wars since Empire? What is your first reaction to that?
My first reaction is that person is stuck on Empire, and that for them, they've not probably been able to get off of that and enjoy a lot of the Star Wars that we have received since then. And some people are downright crotchety about that. Um, you know, Follow-up questions will reveal whether that person is in fact the crotchety person who is stuck on Empire or not. Um, but yeah, that's my initial reaction. Like, okay, all right, let me just sort of like gear up for this, because I don't feel that way. I feel that been a lot of very good Star Wars, even some excellent Star Wars that we have gotten since Empire.
I will jump in here and I will say something probably more controversial before Fredo steps in. Is I don't even think I wonder, why is Empire the measuring stick? It is. I don't think it is the best Star Wars. It's not my favorite, and I actually I don't know why that is the measuring stick. And that's, so that's my whole thing, is that when somebody says that, it's like, why is, where did it become that Empire is the
Gold standard.
yeah, why is that what all Star Wars should be measured against?
Okay, so you don't believe that it should be, right? Or just necessarily. You're saying it could be, it couldn't be. You're asking why.
I mean, to me, I think if you're going to say it's the best Star Wars since, to me, I think the litmus there is A New Hope, because I think that was more groundbreaking. I think that was actually a more enjoyable movie. This is just Aaron talking. I know I'm going to get run out on a rail here, but like I said, when I hear it, first of all, I'm just like, my first thing is like, I would want to say is, why is Empire, and then it gets into, why does everything else suck? So
Actually think that I think when they say, they say since Empire. I think they say, okay, A New Hope was amazing, and then Empire was amazing, and then okay, Return of the Jedi was good, Phantom Menace was Attack of the Clones, Revenge, okay, maybe but so I think people go with the best Star Wars since Empire because they go, nothing has measured up to those first two till now, and do I feel that way? No, I don't. My first reaction when somebody tells me that is, well, how much Star Wars do you really consume? And look, I'm not one of those people who seem to think, look, you have to tell me whose cousins, whose nephew's cousin, former roommate was in a Legends novel for me to believe that you're a true Star Wars fan. Your level of fandom is never up for debate. But I do think for a lot of folks who normally don't consume Star Wars, or people who normally would dismiss Star Wars as fun, lighthearted adventures, Andor hit them differently because it was hitting them in the back of their brain. It was making them think about stuff that normally they don't necessarily associate with Star Wars. Which funny, it's because it's in there, it's baked into it, but it's usually hidden with the droids and the aliens and the laser swords and all the fun stuff. Andor was not. I mean, Andor was epic, but Andor was not fun.
I'm gonna quibble slightly,
Go,
but
quibble
no.
away.
um, First of all, to address Aaron's original point with this, for me personally, the litmus test is A New Hope, or everything that has come after. I look at A New Hope as being the gold standard, and when I think about like what makes ideal Star Wars,
oh,
what
good.
is,
Dave and I can share a cell then when we get thrown in Star Wars jail.
yeah, exactly, and we'll just talk in circles about how much A New Hope is the groundbreaker, right? Um, but the thing about A New Hope for me is that it really sort of defines what Star Wars should be. And so everything that has come along after that to me is compared to A New Hope, including Empire. Um, and Empire does some things better than A New Hope and some things worse. And it's different, and that's okay. And every project that has come along after that, I've tried to take a similar viewpoint into that. I mean, like again, it's different when you're a kid. When we were young, you're like watching these happen in real time. Return of the Jedi comes out. We were all relatively young when
Mhm.
Return of the Jedi came out, and we weren't like anti Ewok. Return of the Jedi is great. I love that movie. It's awesome. It's part of the big three. You know, come to find out later on that there were certain people that were a little bit older that didn't like the teddy bears. Um, but yeah, this problem, quote unquote problem of Star Wars not measuring up has been around forever.
Mhm.
Um, but again, for me personally, I do take that distinction that you mentioned that like why is Empire held up like slightly above A New Hope for a lot of people when for me like it's all A New Hope. I mean, that's where you start. That's where Star Wars starts and begins and ends. It's the alpha, the omega, the everything. Like A New Hope. Okay, is the and again, I can break it down by a lot of different factors. I wrote some of this stuff out, and we can get into that in a few minutes. Um, but like, if you want to evaluate Star Wars, that's
Well,
that's the starting point right there.
I will say this, that when Rogue One came out, I think I was one saying that this is I I felt like I was home because because aesthetically that movie looked the closest to A New Hope, and it had to, but they did such a good job. Like I said, the aesthetics of it, the you know d- even down to the hairstyles and everything. You know, it. I've said it before. The prequels bothered me. Well, the sequels actually bothered me because they changed the blaster sounds. That bothers me. That. I mean, that's weird and it's nitpicky, but and then it's also A New Hope has it has it has its humor, it has its seriousness, it has its peril, but but it's also very hopeful. And I know that and and I don't know. Empire is just, I think everybody just likes it because it's dark and it's it's downer, man. It's like I don't know, it's like the people all turned 17 and started smoking cigarettes when they saw Empire. Um, but and I love Empire Strikes Back, but I'm with you, Dave. Um, you know, so is Andor the okay? So I think what Andor does great, did great, is that it looked so much and felt so much like Star Wars but it seemed like they weren't trying so hard to make it look and feel like Star Wars. It's like, Ahsoka. I loved Ahsoka, but there got to be a time where it's like, okay, maybe it's too many lightsabers. Maybe it's like too many, space flying around. I don't know. It's like they were trying too hard to make it look like both the Star Wars movies and the Clone Wars type. It just seems like they were really trying hard, and Andor felt effortless. It's just like the sets looked effortless. The actors, were just, they were the roles. You know, so I think that's what's good about it.
Yeah, I think, but first I'll say I'm one of those people who do prefer Empire to A New Hope. So I'll be the ones throwing you in prison, so perfectly fine. storyline doing that. No, but what I find that I connected with Andor was very much that sense of it's unapologetic about its story. And that's one of the things, weirdly enough, that I loved a lot about Skeleton Crew, which is a 180 from Andor.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always maintained in this podcast, the Star Wars universe is big enough that it can encapsulate these sides, these various different stories. It doesn't have to be one thing. And I do agree with you, Aaron,
Chicken,
that
fish,
sometimes you,
or vegetarian. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I'll have the lasagna. They're like lasagna on the airplane. Uh, whatchamacallit. So what I find difficult is when you see, because naturally, and look, we're going to get into regarding what makes Star Wars to a certain sense, and for every people that's chemistry. That's you throw a little bit of this, you throw a little bit of that, and the way it comes out it differs from person to person. But the ingredients are the same. The amount or the strength of them can differ. What I find sometimes is difficult with some of the shows and some of the movies is they're trying to hit all the marks instead of saying, I'm going to lean into this. I think that's one of the smart things that Andor did is it didn't, I mean, it touched on the force, but it didn't lean into it. It touched on the idea of the Jedi and Palpatine, but there were presences in the background. This is not their story. I think a lot of times, particularly in a show like Ahsoka or even something like The Mandalorian, particularly The Mandalorian started very grounded, very much this is the galaxy as it is now, and obviously it expanded out of that, which I'm not against, I enjoy, but sometimes that can create a kind of sense of whiplash. Like, what exactly are we doing here? What story? Whose story are we telling? And that is one problem that you do have with unfortunately with Dave Filoni is that he loves all his Star Wars. He doesn't want to give you he doesn't want to give you just this much meat and this much potatoes and this much cake. He wants you to have all the meat and all the potato and all the cakes. And it's like, yeah, buddy, that's gonna get people indigestion.
Where do we fall as a group? Do like again, like
Mm-hmm.
we all sort of think that the question itself is sort of bullcrap,
Mm-hmm.
but where do we fall with Andor? Do we think that it's the best thing since Empire? Even if we think that
No,
question is ridiculous.
no, no, because that would eliminate Rogue One for one. It would eliminate The Last Jedi. It would eliminate Return of the Jedi. It would eliminate stuff like okay, you can kind of quibble with me about maybe the Phantom Menace or Revenge of the Sith. It would disparage the Mandalorian and Skeleton Crew. There's been a lot of. I mean, again, we have been blessed in the last decade or so with a ton of Star Wars. Just the fact, I'm just again, Rogue One. Are you saying that Andor overall is better than Rogue One? That Rogue One wasn't as good? I mean, they're siblings. That you can't say this. Because this is the hot new greatest thing that the big sister all of a sudden is no longer important. It's like no, they're connected. They're interconnected. So I
I,
disagree with the question.
I mean, I think it's kind of like, I imagine, Dave saying that, man, Harper's the best kid since Olivia. It's like, you're not going to do that with your kids. You know what I mean? It's like they, they all, they all bring
Poor
something.
Nathan. Poor Nathan.
They all bring some, all these movies and shows bring something different. And it's like, Fredo, you've mentioned the buffet before. It's like, and I said chicken, fish, or vegetarian. It's like you don't have to eat everything on the buffet, and it's and now I will say this, and I've said it before on this podcast. I think from the Disney Plus shows standpoint, I think in an overall 30,000-foot view, I think Andor is better from from writing, acting, special effects. I think it hits the mark, like it almost bullseyes each one of those. Now, I've also said that if every Star Wars was like Andor, I would have to take medication, because it's too downer of a story. It had to be a downer of a story. But I think there could be some better writing in Ahsoka that's still positive, a positive story and things like that. I think, but sometimes I think the writing falls flat. Sometimes the special effects in, like, when they use the volume in Mandalorian or Obi-Wan Kenobi, it fell a little flat. That doesn't mean that everything has to be practical effects, because they're getting better with the volume. But I think Andor has just kind of hit all the marks. Now, I also wonder. It's like, imagine if somebody was to ask you, "What's the best restaurant in New Orleans?" There's no way to answer that question. There's no answer to that question.
You give
Because
people a list.
you can't. How would you even begin? Because it's different cuisine, it's different chefs, it's different atmospheres, it's different, but it's all quintessentially New Orleans. you know so so I think it's a kind of a BS statement to say it's the best since whatever.
So let me ask you real quick. Do you think that maybe in some instances the dynamics of the show of Andor, I mean, story dynamics, I mean, meaning we already knew where the story was ending, allowed Tony Gilroy and his team to kind of craft a more taut, complete story. Whereas, say, Dave Filoni is still writing, and John Favreau is still writing The Mandalorian and Ahsoka. So those stories are not over, and we know they're not going to be over because we're getting movies out of this. So, do you think maybe the fact that they were constrained to, we can only do this, like we can only make this much because at some point this will connect to Rogue One, and that is our ending? Do you think that maybe that helped them because it gives them the clarity of vision that maybe Filoni and Favreau don't have just yet because they're still crafting theirs?
Not necessarily, because I mean the prequel trilogy, we knew where it had to end,
Mhm.
and it misses the mark in a lot of places. Because of, like I said, I don't think, you know, I think George Lucas needed Lawrence Kasdan to help him write, the prequel. I just think some of the dialogue is kind of, and direction is kind of bad in the prequels. Um, so
Blasphemy.
what I know, right? I yield the floor to
No, double
Dave.
jail cell. Double jail cell.
All right, so again, I threatened to give you guys like my reading of notes here, but all right, I'm going to do this. My big requirements for Star Wars are as follows. And again, a lot of people are going to have different opinions here, and that's cool. Everybody's opinion is valid, unless you like Nazis. My big requirements for Star Wars are a sense of adventure. You could call it a kid-like sensibility, if you will, but I want some of that pew pew in my Star Wars, some action, but also a sense of discovery, if you will. Like we're
The
we're
hero's journey.
learning something,
Yeah.
we're finding out new things. Going along with that, an underlying sense of hope or optimism. And we talked about previously on a previous episode, we talked about, well, is Andor 2, depressing? Um, but apologies to all non-Trek fans here, Aaron. The message should be resistance is not futile. I think like that is a key thing in Star Wars. What we as individuals do can make all the difference in the world, from a farm boy blowing up the Death Star to Rey, a scavenger, becoming the most powerful Force user in all the galaxy. We all matter. Okay, so that's 2. 3, beauty. I need big, gorgeously conceived shots with these Lucas patented wipes, the CGI, but practical, whatever you want to call it. But the colors and the schemes, it's like an artist painting a canvas. Give me John Williams with his sweeping scores and and impeccable costume design and set design and all of these beautiful things that are both familiar and also foreign, evocative of something like alien. To take us, to whisk us away to this other place. You want to go to this other place because it's just your senses are overloaded. It's amazing to just take it in. That's another thing. And then 4, political messaging. Say what you want to say about George Lucas, but the original Star Wars was all about the Vietnam War. And he's given interviews on that topic. Go look it up. If you don't have to take my word for it. This has been there from the very beginning. And so when people say that Star Wars isn't political, they are missing everything. And this is in the tradition of all great science fiction, sci-fi, is that they give us these fantastical settings and that are a proxy for our real world so that we might learn something about ourselves in a way that's maybe less preachy. It's like they're not at the pulpit, so it's like, okay, I can accept that you're telling me that maybe we're on the wrong track here. And then finally, bonus points for space western stuff, lived in universe, aesthetics, and the hero's journey. All of that to me is sort of negotiable. It's like if that stuff's in there, great. Like you're earning extra credit. But if it's not in there, I'm not going to lose my crap. Okay, so that's my list, right? Andor checks all the boxes for me, and like even the sense of adventure, which is where it's weakest, right? You've still got those lighter moments. You've got like him stealing the TIE fighter, right? You've got the incompetent rebels on Yavin. You've got some of the Mon Mothma stuff, which again, that can get real heavy real fast with some of those family dynamics. But like it's still a little bit lighter than somebody having a gun pointed at their temple. And again, though, this is where Andor's weakest for me, is in that area. You think about the optimism. This show has those things. You have to work really hard for it. You have to sit through 5 episodes of, oh my God, this is depressing and it's so bad and
Right.
everyone's gonna die. And then you get it finally. You get the reward. You do get the reward if you sit through it. The beauty, A+++++. It's gorgeous, this show. The political messaging, the same, A+++++. And then bonus points because of what you said about the lived-in universe. That's there. The aesthetics, it feels like Star Wars. It looks and feels and sounds like Star Wars. And then Cassian does in fact go on his own hero's journey in this. So you even get the hero's journey. So like that's the A New Hope test, if you will, for me. Like it's like, does it live up to A New Hope? It absolutely freaking does. And so if somebody wanted to tell me and come to me and say, like, openly and honestly and not in a combative way of Star Wars has been really crappy for the last 30 years, and just say Andor's maybe my favorite thing that I've seen for a long, long time, and I really like it, and I'm there. I'm right there with you, man.
So now
it's so good.
So now it'd be interesting. You're going to need to create that rubric, and then we'll need to go through it. I mean, it'd be interesting to go through each one of the things since Empire, if you will, and see if there are any others that hit that mark. I'm not going to ask you right now if any others hit that mark because Andor is so fresh, but it might be surprising that you might get one or two that's like, okay, well then, and maybe we set up a bracket, of
A scale of 1 to 5, see how close they get to meeting that category, so to speak. Because I mean, it's interesting. I mean, Dave makes when you start considering the elements that make Star Wars, yes, that sense of adventure has to be its foundation. That hero's journey, that quest, that element of going on an adventure, leaving home into the wild unknown, facing dangers, facing yourself, and then growing from it. It's at its heart has been since Binary Sunset played, and everybody's every little 10-year-old kid watching that movie theater said, I want to own a Millennium Falcon. I don't know what it is. I don't know what the heck a Millennium Falcon is, but I want it. So, uh, go ahead there, Aaron.
well, no, it's just what I'm thinking. I agree with you guys. Okay, so but then let's say, you have another movie that has all those things, Dave, that are not set, that is not a Star Wars movie. How do you tell if one's a Star Wars movie and one's not if you don't see the title? And maybe this is a rhetorical question, you know what I mean? It's like, that's the thing that I struggle with, is like, because I agree with all those things, but you could apply that to,
Pirates of the
Pirates of the
Caribbean,
Caribbean, what other,
Indiana Jones.
other movies, so what, how do I know that I'm in a Star Wars movie and not a Star Wars knockoff? That's what I, because it could have all those things, but then there would be something that would make me go, no, that one's Star Wars. It's the Coke Pepsi test, and I don't know what that is right offhand.
Well, I think like some of those smaller pieces that I mentioned, the space western stuff, the lived in universe, the language of Star Wars, right? You hear the blaster and you know that that's Star Wars because it's the blaster sound. It's the right blaster sound. That's, those things, they matter.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I don't know, it would be fun to like, for me, to sit here with this rubric and like apply it to other movies and figure out what other movies would qualify as Star Wars movies. Because like you said, there probably would be some. But like for me personally, this is like these are the non-negotiables, right? Like these, like you do this, and I'm basically right there with you. I mean, I'm gonna forgive a lot of sins, and go along for the ride, and maybe there'll be things that I like or don't like, and we can talk about that. That's what this podcast is for. But if you can do those things, those big ones, and those are the big ones, yeah, I'm in. All right, this is why I'm here. Like, why do I like Star Wars? I just listed it out for you.
Well, I would say that the one of the more recent ones that we all enjoyed, but probably felt the least Star Wars, was Skeleton Crew. If you took your rubric, I mean that's until they threw in the Force. If they didn't have Jude Law using the Force and have a lightsaber at one point, that would be something that if you showed me and said, "Is this Star Wars?" I'd probably say no. But those two little elements, you know what I mean? It doesn't mean that it's bad, but I mean, I think those couple little elements is what identified it as Star Wars. Now I accept it as, part of the Star Wars story and everything like that. But yeah, that's.
I think like that's where I would fall in favor of it being very much Star Wars, is because like for me it is the big important pieces that it gets right. It doesn't get the details 100% right with the lightsabers
Well,
and the
and that's what
force
that's
and
what
all
I'm
the
saying. That if it
yeah.
wasn't for those two things, that it would have been a show that could that it might
It
not have
could
been
have fit
Star
in
Wars.
any universe,
Right.
right? It could have fit anywhere. Um, but again, like it to me, it's good Star Wars
Hmm.
because it has those big important pieces. It has that sense of adventure. It has the optimism. It has the beauty. Um, Even some of the political messaging, which is kind of a little more under the surface, some of that's there. Um, and then, like we said, some of that stuff, the some of the details are really really cool there too. So, yeah, I mean, I I I loved freaking Andor, man. I
I
mean, like this was just an excuse really for us to talk more about Andor and just talk about how much we love it, but
I
also
do too. I just disagree with the premise. I don't
like
I think it's I think your first the first thing you said was 100%. It's like when somebody says that, and I have good friends who say that. When they say that, it's like, okay, you have an axe to grind with something somewhere, you know.
And what I would say is that a lot of times, and this is where we get into those elements of what makes Star Wars and the way that we perceive them. Because for me, Skeleton Crew felt right at home in Star Wars. It was very much an adventure within that fits the paradigms and the dynamics of Star Wars. But I could see where, somebody might say, well, until you show me somebody wielding the Force and holding a lightsaber, it's not Star Wars. Well, Andor had neither one of those.
Well, the X-wing
You know,
fighters helped as well in Skeleton Crew.
but that's my point. Yeah, yeah, exactly. But that's my point. It's like Andor had none of that, and everyone's going, "Here's Star Wars' Empire," or "Here's Star Wars," of Disney's run, and it's like, but it lacked some of those things that make it identifiable as Star Wars, and maybe that's part of the dynamic for a lot of people. They want Star Wars, but they don't necessarily want all the Star Wars in Star Wars, and you're like, that seems counterintuitive, but and this gets
yeah.
to okay, well, for some folks, they they want certain elements because they appreciate them and they enjoy them. But there's other stuff that they go, well, I really can't get behind any of that stuff. And you go, but it's part of it. It's part of what makes this. It's like liking sushi, but saying I can't really have rice. Well, it's like, okay, well, we can give you a roll of seaweed paper with some veggies and some tuna in it. You can call it sushi, or you can get sashimi with no rice. But okay, if you don't like rice, you're gonna have a hard time here. I think part of what we run into is everybody gets the right to say, well, this is what I like out of Star Wars. And that's fair and good. And look, for some people, Andor was everything they wanted out of a Star Wars story. And you know what? Won't disagree with them. And some people will say, well, The Acolyte was everything I wanted out of a Star Wars story. That's fine. Again, I go back to that initial point. There is enough bandwidth, there's enough space in this galaxy to fit all these elements, and it's more less a question of does it have or doesn't it have it, more how do you fit the elements in so that it does look and sound and feel like it's part of the Star Wars universe. And again, every creative person doing this is going to have a different weight of caliber on that, and that's fine.
Well, and that's the thing that if I have a mission, it's I've said it before that you know liking does not is not the same as value. That I think that it's okay for somebody to say I don't like Skeleton Crew. I think it's fine for somebody to say I think Andor is the best Star Wars that I have seen in 30 years. Fine, you know. Uh, but to say something is or isn't or is better Star Wars, that it's like, I mean, again, that's like if you don't like the meal, that's fine, but still, it's still food, you know, it's there's still this is still Star Wars, and it's okay if you don't like it. And it seems like people get really personally hurt if they don't like the new Star Wars. Does that make sense?
I think
There's starving Star Wars kids
It
in
it's like
halfway around the globe.
they're personally offended that they made Skeleton Crew because it didn't work for them. I don't know. It's weird.
I think that like we're making it the more that this stuff more of this stuff that comes out, the more likely it is that you will connect with something and won't connect with another thing, and there'll be a wide range um, between those two outcomes. You know, you'll sort of like this one other project, this other thing will do these things well, but not these other things. So it's like there will be a lot of we talk about this, like a lot of room for people to sort of take and leave what they like, um, take what they like and leave what they don't. um, I do want us to also very briefly just acknowledge too the giant elephant in the room that we haven't talked about at all, which is that a lot of people saw the original movies when they were kids, and then they grew up, and then they got angry that they weren't getting that feeling anymore that Star Wars gave them when they were a kid. They go and they watch Phantom Menace, and it they're not the feeling's gone. It's not there. They couldn't recreate it for themselves. And I don't know what to tell people that go through that. And other than like, yeah, you grew up, you grew up, and that's okay, and that's
I
fine. I mean,
I mean I still remember my best friend. That he's been my best friend since preschool. You know, when he called me and he's like, "All right," he said, I want to go see The Last Jedi, but I'm hearing all these things, you know, and I'm really kind of nervous about it." I was like, I said, go into it with, don't go into it with any expectations. I said, it looks like Star Wars. It feels like Star Wars. Just enjoy the moment. And he didn't do that because he had, you know, that's my suggestion is that I was whisked away during, you know, the Phantom Menace. I was enthralled, you know, I was back in Star Wars because it's like I for 2 hours I am in Star Wars. Every single time we've gone to see Star Wars, I've been that way. Probably even, you know, Rise of Skywalker. I was still excited, you know, even though that makes me sad. But um, uh, but yeah,
What's interesting,
I think
what
I mean, I've said that same thing before, Dave. It's, you know, um, you're never going to get you're never going to feel the way you felt when you saw the first one when you were 7 years old or whatever. It's just not going to happen. But you don't have to let 52-year-old self, you know, allow yourself to have fun. It's like going to Disney World. You can either complain about the heat and complain about the crowds and complain about, you know, everything, or you can allow yourself to be a kid and get excited to see Mickey Mouse for at least a day. So, Fredo, sorry.
no. And actually, because what I was thinking is, as Gil were talking, is I was just thinking, it's interesting that if I were to say, well, you know, you may not like that band's music anymore because you outgrew it, or maybe you don't like that author's writing anymore. Maybe it's, you know, you move past that author, you know, will accept that with art and artists, there's moments where you will feel like, okay, it's not connecting with me anymore. Maybe they're going through a different phase, or maybe the material is just moved to a point where it's not really, I think. Funny thing is, everybody goes, well, that's fine. I still got my old records or my old albums or my old books that I can always go back and revisit, and that connected with those. But with this, it's interesting that so many people struggle to just go, you know what? Yeah, maybe this stuff is not connecting with me the way it was, but I still have all the old stuff, and that's still awesome for me. You know, I find it surprising. There's a lot of implied ownership, or maybe unstated sense of this is my thing. and it should always stay in the way that connects with me. And if you're trying to branch off and do things that connect with other people, that's not cool. Whereas most other art forms and art mediums, people accept that at some point maybe you grew up beyond say something like Stephen King. Maybe you're age 12 and you're reading out your Stephen King novel, and then you hit 16 and you go like, okay, this is no longer my jam. Or you no longer care for uh, the directing of John Carpenter or Steven Spielberg, and that's fine. People, or maybe you no longer care to listen to Pearl Jam or Bruce Springsteen, whatever. Name artists in, and people accept it as a human being that's growing and maturing, and tastes are changing and moving. That you're gonna maybe walk away from something and go, that's no longer my thing, and that's fine. But with Star Wars, people take a level of ownership over it. They go, no, no, it has to stay my thing. It can't go away from that.
I don't like the Rogue One erasure in the current discourse around Andor because, like you said earlier, that's they're siblings, right? Rogue One and Andor are siblings. Rogue One was great. I loved it. And I think like if you get some of the discourse around this, and the reason I bring up the whole like you were a kid and now you're not a kid, and I understand all that. I think like the reason I even bring that up is because like Andor is an adult show with adult themes and adult language, and it's speaking to you as an adult. And for a lot of people, that's dry and boring. For a lot of other people, it's what they've been waiting for Star Wars to be, again, for 30 years, right? Because they grew up, they grew out of it. They don't like attempts to recreate what they experienced as a kid because it just can't measure up. But if you give them something new that feels different and feels more mature, now you're speaking directly to them and they feel engaged. And I think there's a lot of that going on as well. But I think all three of us have made our position on this pretty clear, which is just like there's so much Star Wars out there for everyone now.
And that Andor is pretty damn good. Yeah.
And that Andor is worthy of all the praise that it has gotten. It's a phenomenal show. I hope it cleans up during the awards season. I loved it. It deserves it all. But also, there's other good Star Wars. There's other good Star Wars. Open your mind.
Well, with that, I think that's a good place to stop and punch Nazis. So
that's right.
With that, we will say, who dat?
Who dat?
Who dat?
Have an awesome 4th of July, and don't blow up your hands. Bye.
McConkey.